Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and for today's MCSG video, I've got a pretty hot topic that's divided a lot of people, and I'll be honest, I expect my take on the situation to piss people off on both sides of this debate, but I hope that those watching will at least take what I'm saying about it into consideration. It's been almost 6 months since Hamas, based in the Gaza Strip of Palestine, attacked Israel on October 7th, and this leg of the conflict has really been, I guess, different to watch. I don't know, that's the best way I can put it. But you get the idea. Western news outlets have supported Israel since day one because, of course, Hamas is a militant terror organization who represents the most extreme parts of this conflict that's been going on since, like, the dawn of time. But the nature of the conflict has actually split the West's perspective of it, mostly by age groups, as I've seen in my experience. I'll go out and say it in the first minute of the video. I support the people of Palestine in this conflict, not Hamas and their extremist goals, but the innocent civilians in Palestine who have been suffering unimaginably ever since Hamas's original attack. You are allowed to have that take. But if you have been fortunate enough to not be blasted with info about all this on a daily basis, you may be asking, well, how are the people of Palestine suffering when people from there are the ones attacking? And dear viewer, I've got a hell of a lot to tell you. Retaliation is a hell of a drug. You get so blinded by anger and hate that you lose control of yourself and your values cease to exist. Is what I would say if Israel was actually just blinded by anger. While the conflict in the Middle East between Muslims and Jews has gone on for thousands of years, the last 80 or so are what I'll quickly touch on for this video. In 1947, the United Nations adopted what's been known as the Partition Plan, which sought to divide the British Mandate of Palestine into Arab and Jewish states. Always the damn British. In 1948, the State of Israel was created, sparking the first Arab-Israeli War. That ended in 1949 with Israel's victory, but 750,000 Palestinians were displaced, and the territory was divided into three parts. There was the State of Israel, the West Bank of the Jordan River, and the Gaza Strip. Among other little wars going on throughout that time period, there was a 6-day war in 1967, where Israel stole land from Egypt, go crazy, as well as the Gaza Strip. Eventually, in 79, Egypt and Israel agreed to a treaty, which ended that whole issue, but then we get to the 21st century. And for most of my life, Gaza has effectively been an open-air prison due to Israel's control over it. This is because Hamas won elections in Gaza, and Western governments didn't like that, so they gave Israel the complete authority over Gaza. Internet access, water, electricity, food, you name it, Israel controlled it. And you sort of start to get the idea here. When your country's mortal enemy controls every aspect of your life, you start to not like him very much, and this led to a number of conflicts involving Hamas over the following 15-ish years, mostly related to protests done by the Palestinian people that caught Israel's attention, so Israel just started killing them because, alright, I don't actually have an answer to that one. They were just killing to kill. In late 2022, the seeds for the current conflict were sown. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who I'm sure you've heard of by now, was inaugurated, and his far-right religious government got to work on plans to end Palestine. Yep. This is why I am openly against religious states and governments. After less than a year, it boiled over and culminated on Hamas's aforementioned attack, where they killed over 1,000 Israelis and took hundreds of hostages. Obviously, this was bad, alright? I've said before, I do not support Hamas, this type of thing being why, but the reason why people support Palestine is because of Israel's totally unmeasured and clinically insane response to the attack. Ever since that day, Netanyahu and the Israeli Defense Force, or IDF, affectionately called the IOF for what they've been doing recently, have been trying to wipe quote-unquote Hamas off the face of the earth. It's understandable at first glance. Hamas attacked them, so it stands to reason that they should pay for that, yes? The thing is, and this is where problems arose, Israel never really cared about just destroying Hamas. The numbers coming out of Gaza have been awful. Well over 30,000 have been killed, with nearly half of that number being children, all innocent civilians, and nearly 80% of Gaza's population of 2.3 million have had to evacuate their homes because, as I mentioned, Israel's doing whatever they can to ethnic cleanse the Islamic population there. On top of their attacks in the West Bank, there's also been reports of Israel attacking Lebanon and Syria, which is absolutely unhinged, so just to sort of give you an idea of what Israel's been up to outside of their ethnic cleansing operation in Gaza. I should mention there's been numerous attempts to arrange a ceasefire, and while Hamas has shot a couple of them down, it's been Israel rejecting the most reasonable ones, including a proposition made by the UN General Assembly. They are laser focused on eliminating the Palestinian people and using Hamas as their scapegoat. That's just what Israel's been up to. All this has a lot of people, especially in my generation, pissed the hell off at Israel. And the interesting thing about this conflict is that governments around the world don't really see it our way. For the longest time, the American government sided with Israel in the conflict, sending aid their way to help with the genocide. That is, the offensive into Gaza, with the ultimate goal to put an end to Hamas. Yeah, that sounds more accurate and representative of Israel's real goals. Jokes aside, it's only been within around the past month where the US government has started to get on Israel's case about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and the, genocide going on. I'm glad that more governments have begun catching on. It's years late, but at least they're doing something now instead of unilaterally supporting Israel whenever possible. I was happy to hear that the Biden administration has begun constructing a dock to get food and supplies into Gaza, and it would be great if our government would also stop sending money to the Zionists in Israel who want to eradicate Palestine, but sending aid to Gaza is commendable nonetheless. We can't always be right the first time, and while it definitely took the U.S. government longer than it should have by a long shot to support Gaza, even though we're, still jointly supporting Israel, so we're still not on the right side, but we're helping now. And I think that is at least a baby step in the right direction here. The discourse over it, especially on Twitter, has also been interesting to read through. My generation supports Palestine almost universally, while my parents' generation, even on both sides of the political aisle, is a lot more supportive of Israel. My die-hard liberal mom actually endorsed Zionists for the last 6 months, and I don't actively live with her, but every time she would bring up the war when I would visit, I'd try to convince her to see it from the Palestinian people's point of view just as much as the Israelis' point of view, but she'd always write it off and voice her support for Israel. And I recently went to DC with her for a convention, and as our government started to become more supportive of Gaza, with, Biden getting heated at Netanyahu over the whole situation, just to give an example, it was extremely satisfying to see her mind change regarding the situation. Listening to her talk about how she regretted supporting the side committing genocide was fun, because I got to look back at her with the biggest smirk on my face. Many I told you so's were had last week, team. Part of why her stance changed, though, was because major news outlets that had always supported Israel were no longer able to do so with all the new information coming from Gaza. And I honestly do attribute this generational divide over this war to all of the major outlets supporting Israel for the last 5 months, because it's what they've always done, because turning people against Israel would be viewed as anti-Semitic, which kind of don't know what to tell you if you think anti-Zionism is the same as anti-Semitism. I mean, the U.S. House seemed to think that, but that's a widespread sentiment, though, so I don't know, maybe the world's gone mad or something. But the bottom line is that major news outlets are also complicit in this war and genocide and the uptick in Muslim hate around the world, and it really sucks when people would rather listen to CNN or Fox than their own kids, for example. Major political extremist out there, but it is what it is, I guess. Hard to change people's minds when they're set in their ways. There's also the whole thing with protests on college campuses and how Jewish students don't feel safe because of our generation's support for Palestine, or something. It has unfortunately happened to both Jewish Americans and Muslim Americans, but again, major extremist L's for the people that actually do go out of their way to harass others just based on their religion. But that's just my take on the whole thing. I'm sure I've pissed people off on both sides of this debate, but the extremism is bad. That's kind of the thing that I'm really trying to get at here. It's like, Hamas is an extremist group. I don't like them. The Zionist Israeli government is an extremist group. I don't like them. Like, can we all just give up extremism? Like, that would be really great. I mean, I know I'm just a guy with 1,500 subs talking at his computer screen, but it would be nice if the world could be less polarized. But that's on, the major news outlets, like I was talking about. It's kind of on them to sort of help with that. So, I don't know. maybe there's hope, maybe there's not, but you get the idea. I've been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more, and I will see y'all later.